Gloria Strode, and welcome to Straightforward. We are still on location in Orlando, and we are highlighting women and leadership that just purely blaze trails on many levels. And our guest is the one and only Tamara. Did I get it right?
That's correct.
Tamara, like my dear friend Sarah, Singleton-Broadnax.
Yes.
And you are a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, went on to blaze other trails at Virginia Commonwealth University.
Yes.
And you were the first there in your field of what you graduated in. But I want you to share with our audience, particularly our young people, your path to success. And you've had so much of it. I mean, you have been the first of many things. But a lot of times our young people don't understand that you might start a path here that might lead you somewhere else, and you need to follow wherever that is. You're not just stuck in one profession. Myself, I've had many. In my other life, I was a social worker for 30 years. So I just think that's important, and I wanted you to share your story for a lot of our young viewers, a lot of my beloved young people at the Albany State University. I wanted them to see someone like you, that regardless, you just took that path, your wife, your mother, your sister, your daughter, but it didn't stop you. So share that with our audience.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
So I come from a family of military brats. My
Okay.
father joined the Army in 1950 when the Army was still segregated, and he served for 30 years.
Wow.
And so when he retired, the Army was completely different.
Okay.
And there are 6 siblings in my family, and there's 15 years between the oldest
Really?
and the youngest. My
So that's like 2 sets.
it was
In the old school, yeah.
It was pairs of 2s.
Yes.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, every one of my siblings went into the military, and
So you all are a family, your legacy of service to this country.
we are.
I mean, no one could call that into question, starting with Dad.
Well, actually, my grandfather served in World War I. My mother's
Really?
father. He was drafted. And so I guess the initial service started with him, and then through my father and on to my siblings.
How amazing. So we have 3 generations.
From 1917.
Really? So we got the granddaddy, we got the daddy, and then the 6 children.
Yes.
See, there's nothing more patriotic and American than that.
Right.
Right. So how did you, I know you have brothers, I know some of them, and one of your brothers, I always look forward to going to his house, because your mom and your brother's mother-in-law make the best homemade cakes. So it's a treat to get invited there to get some of those cakes. How did you end up at the United States Military Academy at West Point?
Yes. So my sister is the oldest,
Okay.
and there are 2 girls and 4 boys, and there's 13 years between my sister and myself.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in the first class of women to get their commissions through ROTC back in 1976.
Really?
She was. And we were roommates, so I was fascinated by seeing that she was going to college.
Yes.
She was going to be an Army officer.
Mm-hmm.
She was on a scholarship.
Okay.
And when she graduated, I knew she would outrank my dad.
Wow.
So she really was
So
my
those were goals to
inspiration.
work for. Yes.
So I looked at my sister as a role model,
Mm-hmm.
and I was number 5 in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured that I knew I wanted to go in the military,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I wanted a scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew I wanted the best preparation to be an Army officer.
Right.
And that's when I discovered West Point.
Okay.
So I read about it,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was in the 5th grade, I decided I was going to go to West Point.
Really?
I did.
That is so amazing.
And everything,
5th grade.
5th grade.
Wow.
So, and everything I did after that point was to get me into the academy.
You were preparing.
I was preparing.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated second in my class. I
Mm-hmm.
was the vice president of my class. I was the
Mhm.
captain of the track team. I
Okay.
played field hockey.
So you were physically fit.
I was an athlete.
Right, because in in order to make it through all of the basic training, and I've heard all of the stories. Of course, my husband's a West Point graduate, about on the plane or whatever that is, and
It's tough.
being on the rock squad with the swimming. Were you on the rock squad? Or you
I was a high rock. I did swim prior to getting there, but swimming was a challenge.
Yes, yes. Okay, so, but you were preparing since 5th grade.
Since 5th grade.
Wow.
So when I was a junior, I did early admission,
Mm-hmm.
and I found out I was accepted. So my backup plan was, if I didn't get into West Point, I could always go somewhere else.
Right.
But I wanted to go there, and when I found out I had been selected to go
Mm-hmm.
on a presidential nomination.
Wow, how
I was
amazing.
really
Blazing the trail. Yeah.
So you can set a goal very early and quietly work on it
Mm-hmm.
to achieve what you
Right,
want.
so being the leader and being involved with the right organizations at school, track and other athletic things, you were
Junior
getting.
ROTC,
Okay, junior RC, you were getting physically fit and prepared for that dream.
I was.
That's what our young people have to understand. It takes planning and preparation. No, people don't mind supporting your dream, but you can't wait till the last minute. And believe it or not, here with this just people going back to college, I actually had people calling me because their child didn't have a room in the dormitory. And I'm thinking, that's something you should have been doing last spring. You know, planning ahead. And so that's why I wanted you to share, because you had so much academic success. I mean, we can't even talk about it all. But all of this is very important. So when we're teaching our children and helping them to understand, and then a lot of the young parents, they are from a different generation. So they don't really understand, you know, a lot of things because they came from what I like to call a microwave. You know, it's a quick and in a hurry, but you started preparing 5th grade.
I did.
I'm impressed with that. I really am. And so you have children of your own.
I did.
Okay, and so they had to learn early about setting goals, I'm sure.
It did, and I like that analogy because, you know, I grew up before we had microwaves.
Right.
So you had to warm things
So,
up.
exactly.
You had to pull out some pots and pans.
Right,
to cook.
yes, yeah. And so our young people, and you know, I've worked in many places all over the country, dragging around my husband, you know, and with all of his career things. And that's the thing in the workplace I've learned. They think everything comes overnight. And that's why I wanted to highlight you awesome women that have blazed the trails and just created a legacy for yourself. So what we're going to do is go to our first break to our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors.
Straightforward is brought to you by State Senator Ed Harbison, serving the citizens of Georgia's 15th Senatorial District and on the front lines for veterans every day. Progressive Funeral Home, family owned and operated since 1952. The George Ford legacy of high standards continues today in the compassionate and professional services provided, a touch of dignity for those who care. Progressive Funeral Home, 4235 St. Mary's Road, trusted by generations. Whole Patient Healthcare. Dr. Jada Rimes-Bacote is board certified in family medicine. She believes the best patient care includes practical, individualized lifestyle changes. Located at 1338 13th Avenue, Columbus, 706-641-2080, or visit wholepatienthealthcare.com.
And welcome back to Straightforward. I'm continuing this conversation with, say it for me? Tamara. I want to say Tamara because I shared this with you in the sidebar. I have a dear friend that has a daughter who's a coach, and your names are spelled just the same, but you know, we're in the South and we will mess up people's names. So, Singleton-Broadnax, I can get that part right. And I just wanted you to share more about your experience at the United States Military Academy at West Point, how you survived. You were class of 1989.
Yes.
So you were 9 years behind my husband, which he has his own stories, very interesting, and I'm sure as an African-American woman, you have your stories too, but you did very well there, and then you went on to have a great career, and now you got another career and more credentials, you probably need a whole room just to put all of your stuff, all of your accomplishments in. So share with our audience a little bit about the West Point experience and where you went from there.
Sure. So at West Point, at the time, women were outnumbered 10 to 1. And women were first allowed to graduate in 1980, and I showed up in 1985. In terms of African American females, we were a very small portion of our class. So we made up 1% of my graduating class. There were 11 of us who graduated in 1989 out of 1,200 non-minority cadets.
Okay.
And the way you notice that is I was the only African American female in my battalion, which is 3 companies and it's about 500 cadets for 4 years.
Really?
The only one. And so at West Point there's the 4th class system and you work your way through the ranks and you really do have equality with your other peers. So that was a good experience for me. But I was pretty much an easy person to remember. We had to have the people please remember who the upperclassmen were. And I'd cover my name and I would say, who am I? And they would stumble and I said, you know, I'm Cadet Singleton and you can remember me because I'm short. But the idea was, look, I'm the only
Right, you're the only African American, so you should
female.
remember me
So,
female,
yeah. So
right?
they
right.
got it eventually.
Right.
So after graduation, I was a quartermaster officer. I wanted to go quartermaster. I wanted to go to Fort Lee. I wanted to be like the quartermaster general over the PX. Because when I was a kid, I used to see the picture and I'm like, I'm going to do that.
This is when Dad was in the military, so you were aspiring then, all the way back to the 5th grade. It's like, yeah, I want to be that. In the PX, right, when you're on the shop, right.
You think what you're going to do. So I was a quartermaster officer, went to Germany, and we deployed to Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Really?
We did. And so that was a very interesting experience. As a female officer, they don't put you in all female units. They don't put you in segregated units.
Right.
So, you know, I led primarily men into those conditions. So we found out around Thanksgiving, and by the middle of December, we were there, and we spent our Christmas there.
Was that your first Christmas?
It was my first Christmas
Away.
After graduation.
I guess. So that was just something different in itself.
It was, and I was in Germany and there, but I did find that the stress affected people differently.
Right.
People who I thought I could count on were really struggling when we were there.
When you deployed.
And
so how long were you there?
About 6 months.
Okay.
So we deployed and came back right before June. We were very busy.
Were you married then?
No. I was
Okay,
single.
so you didn't have to worry about a spouse left behind or assigned somewhere else and children. Okay, that's a good thing. You were smart enough to do a lot of your adventures before you decided to.
Well, you pretty much did a lot of training, and at that time, they condition you to want to get a combat patch and this kind of thing. And I do remember having a conversation with this female captain who was crying because she had to leave her family
Right.
and her daughter. And when they deploy you, they have you take care of all of your affairs as if you're not going to return.
Exactly.
So your will is done, your
Yes.
stuff is in storage. So if you don't come back, everything
It's tied up in
is
this little
prepared.
bow. Right.
And so she was crying, and I looked at her and I said, well, at least you had a chance to get married.
Right.
At least you had a chance
Right.
to
Just look
have
at
a
the-
family
yeah.
and have a daughter. If I go, all I have is a VCR and a carpet. So
That's funny.
it
A VCR, right, and a carpet.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, maybe this is all you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So had a very interesting experience there. Came back, we drew down, and I ended up going to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
But I will tell you, based on that experience, I went to Colorado Springs, worked out there, And then I went back to West Point, and I was the minority admissions officer
Oh, wow.
back in 1993.
So you helped with the recruiting and all
I
of
was
that?
over the entire
Amazing.
program.
Okay.
And so it's a robust program. We have lieutenants in different regions, and we were responsible for recruiting minority kids, because minority kids who can go to West Point can go anywhere.
Exactly.
And we were competing with other Ivy League schools, and so it was a very challenging type job.
But rewarding.
It was.
And you were looking at it from a different perspective.
And as a graduate.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
But while I was in that job, I was subpoenaed by the Department of Justice because VMI had a ban on women attending their school.
Okay.
And the Department of Justice sued VMI and they lost because it was a private school. So this was the appellate case. And they wanted to know how West Point did their admission standards, how they integrated women, were women treated differently. And so I was subpoenaed and I actually testified.
Okay, so you were a subject matter expert.
I
You
was.
speak to it. No, I mean, really, you have to call it what it is. And that part, see, I didn't know, so I'm learning more about you because I do follow you on social media and I do see the different things, and then of course some of the sidebar conversations at your brother's Keith, you know, over gatherings before I even met you. So, but what we're going to do is go to our next break, to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors.
Columbus Pediatrics, Georgia, working together to build lifelong relationships between our staff and patients by consistently providing compassion, excellence, and value with 2 locations. The Old Town office at 3580 Massey Lane, Suite F, 706-596-8667. The Midtown office, 1900 11th Avenue, Suite A, 706-323-3400. ColumbusPediatricsGA.com. Barbara's Cleaning Service, a 5-star commercial service with satisfied customers in Georgia and South Carolina, built on the principle that every detail matters. Barbara's Cleaning Service, a new season building a family legacy. David Benefield at the historic Highland Hall, florist extraordinaire, making dreams come true for all occasions. Visit David and his team today at 1504 17th Street or call 706-324-4881, where happiness blooms.
And welcome back to Straightforward. I am enjoying this very informative, enlightening conversation. I was not aware that you had returned to West Point and you were recruiting the minority. You shared something before we went to the break about being a subject matter expert and helping to integrate VMI.
That's correct.
All of that is so important, and the additional education that you attained even after going to the United States Military Academy, which is one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. However, I still love the Albany State University. I was never the military type.
I see.
No. I would not. It would not work well for me. You have to have a certain mindset and discipline. And so, no, I wouldn't be up at 5 o'clock running or any of that. So we have to know where we fit. That's my point. You know, some folks are made to do certain things that some others are not. So you got to know what works for you. Okay, so share with our audience what we were saying about you helped with the integration and you were a witness.
Oh,
for
it
the
was
Department of
awesome.
Justice. Yeah.
And they talked about my experiences, and I said, well, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't know if it's a female
That's true.
pulling the trigger or
True.
a male. And so they were very interested in what I did and who I worked with and what my personal experiences were, because I had come from Virginia.
Right.
And I knew that it was not an opportunity that was open. So the point, because I was the admissions officer, we used to recruit women at West Point, but women were doing so well on their own, they no longer needed to be recruited.
Okay.
And on paper, if you look at a woman's application, she's actually better qualified
Usually.
than the man,
Yeah.
because we could only take 100 women at West Point versus 1,000 men.
Exactly.
So there were things like that, but It was a very interesting experience. We won the case. I got to meet Janet Reno. She was the
Really?
attorney general
Okay.
at the time. She thanked me for my testimony, wrote me a really nice letter. But it's really nice to look back on that experience
Yes.
and to know that.
Well, you
we
made a
had-
difference. See, all that's a part of your legacy, and that's why I wanted to sit with you. I knew it was just amazing. And so then you left all of your West Point life, and then you went and blazed another trail
I did.
in healthcare.
Well, I got married, and my husband and I lived in Saudi Arabia for 4 years.
Really?
Had my children there, came back. And at West Point, you study engineering.
Right.
So I had this 4-year break, and I took a job as a process engineer for Honeywell.
Okay.
And that got us from Huntsville, Alabama, back to the Richmond, Virginia area.
Okay.
And I worked as a process engineer, and I hated it. And I said,
That wasn't your calling.
it wasn't.
Exactly.
I mean, I was utilizing what I had been taught, and they, you always have this conversation, do you want your boss's job?
Right.
And I didn't. I could not see myself being a plant manager
Right.
somewhere. That
Right.
wasn't the end all for me. So I decided I needed to go to graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a lawyer. I didn't want to argue all day. I'm
Right.
not a
No,
C-
you're a diplomat. You're very chilled.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I didn't want an MBA. I liked working with people more than machines. And I've always been interested in healthcare, so I decided to become a nurse.
Okay.
So I left the job as a process engineer, worked as a contractor for the Army there at Fort Lee, Virginia, went back to nursing school. And then when I finished nursing school, I became a nurse in 2004. So I've been a nurse for over 20 years now.
Okay.
And I had to start at the bottom,
See, that's important. Even with having your degree from the United States Military Academy, you went to a new field, but you have to start at the bottom.
That's correct.
Practical is, we got theory, but practical, like you said in a sidebar, you can't just ignore experience.
You can't teach experience.
No,
You
you
gotta get
can't.
out there, roll up your sleeves and do the work.
Yeah.
So I was a critical care nurse, an ICU nurse in the coronary ICU, heart attacks, codes, and people on life
Serious
support.
nursing.
For 3 years, went back and got my master's in nursing administration and leadership, became a nurse manager, a nurse educator, a nursing instructor at the VCU School of Nursing, became a program manager, became a nursing director, and then I earned my doctorate in nursing practice back in 2018.
You just love school, don't you?
Well, along the way.
Along the way,
Along
being a
the
wife,
way,
a
yeah,
mother,
it's a lot.
and you were still matriculating.
And working with people, and working every day, full time.
Really? When did
So-
you sleep?
Not much sleep during the
I
next 2
know.
years.
So I guess they trained you that at West Point. You didn't sleep that much.
No, you
Right.
multitask. And so 2018, I came back to the VA, and I work as a consultant for the
Okay.
VA. I was in Richmond. I was able to transfer
So it's
here.
VA healthcare.
The Veterans Health
Care.
Administration.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
I
a
just
nurse.
wanted to say, okay.
I'm a nurse.
On the health side.
I am.
No, because you have enough credentials where you could be the secretary of the VA.
Oh, I
You know what I'm
see.
saying? So, but no, you are here providing service to our wonderful patriots, the facilities.
I am,
that
and
serve.
I'm more of a consultant. I mean, I stayed at the bedside for 10 years,
Right.
but I've been in management administration, and I'm board certified as a
Right.
nurse executive,
Okay.
advanced. So I help develop new programs
Right.
for the VA.
For the quality care of our.
That's correct.
Those,
Because my
our patriots.
doctorate is in quality and patient safety.
Okay,
And
which is
so
important.
It is.
Because in the news, we hear a lot about things that people are not happy with at our VA facilities.
Or any hospital.
Any hospital.
Because this is in the private sector as well.
Okay,
The jobs are equivalent to what
Right.
happens in the private sector.
right, and so you're still serving.
I am.
Still
And I
serving.
reached the 20-year mark with the VA back in February.
Really?
I did.
Well, we were blessed to finally get our VA facility in Columbus because our veterans were either going to Fort Moore, which used to be Fort Benning, Tuskegee, or they had to go to Montgomery, and so we finally got the Portage Clinic, and which people were very excited to get that. And so all of that's important because you're a veteran, your dad, your siblings, my husband, my father was World War II. We have to take care of the people that
And and to
sacrifice.
your point, yeah, it's very gratifying
Mhm.
as a veteran to work on behalf of other veterans.
Exactly.
So now
And you've been to the battlefield.
I have.
And so you've seen up close
I've
and
walked the
personal,
walk.
right, what people need. So it's not a hypothetical.
And I'm a patient, so I
Mhm.
use the VA for healthcare.
Okay.
So now I'm a regional network
Mhm.
quality assurance for all the VISN 8 facilities. So all the I have oversight of all the facilities in Florida,
Really?
in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean.
Okay, and so that's why we are here in Orlando, and we
Yes.
left our big sprawling estate with the farm and the vegetables. See, I watched you up in Virginia, and so that's why you're here in the Sunshine State. So
Yes, and I plan to retire in a few years.
well, we get a little more work out
I
of
still
you.
have work to do.
No, we have work to do because we need the best and the brightest and the fully committed on the front lines serving those that have served us. And I believe in that. I mean, I've had the VA over the years. We're in our 11th season. And I can call them by name, the social workers from Tuskegee to whoever works on Fort Benning to the VA clinic. Because it's important to once people, those that are older or either young, that's been to battle, when they come back, we have a responsibility to take care, to come and talk to our young people, particularly our young women, so they
Well, I
can
hope
see.
this was helpful.
Oh, it was very helpful.
Okay.
People like you, to look like you and have all that success is just amazing. And I really, truly thank you so much for doing this.
And thank you for the invitation.
All right. This has been straightforward. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Until next time, be blessed.
The Autism Hope Center. Diane Pope has dedicated the last 3 decades ensuring that families had support and resources for their loved ones on the autism spectrum. Join the Autism Hope Center for fellowship and resources located at 200 Hamilton Road, Suite B, or call 706-604-6333. Muskogee County Coroner Buddy Bryan. Buddy has set high standards for himself and his staff, ensuring that every citizen is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of circumstances. Buddy cares about crime prevention and is always excited to speak with students and community organizations. Reach out to Buddy at 706-653-3260.
What up, world? What's up, Columbus? Be sure to tune in every Sunday straight forward with Gloria Strode, right here on NBC 38.